Picture this. It's August 2026. You walk up to a heavy brass door in Shanghai, the headquarters of a major international institution. You knock confidently, expecting to be let right in. But the door stays completely shut. That silence, the silence right after that knock, is actually one of the most revealing mysteries playing out in global finance right now. In this explainer, we're diving straight into what happens when a heavily sanctioned economy tries to join the exact financial institution built to escape the US dollar, only to hit a massive structural brick wall.
Our story kicks off with a bold, incredibly specific claim. Let's go to August 12, 2026, at a BRICS finance ministers meeting in Jaipur, India. Abdolnaser Hemmati, the governor of Iran's central bank, grabs the mic and makes a huge announcement. He says Iran will soon join the New Development Bank. Now, if you know the space, you know this is the lender founded by the BRICS states specifically to offer an alternative to Washington's financial setup. On paper, it sounds like a massive, straightforward win for a sanctioned economy hungry for capital.
But here's the thing. That announcement, it hit a wall almost immediately. The bank itself outright declined to confirm it. If you go digging for an official statement confirming Iran's membership is imminent, you're going to find a totally blank page. And remember, this bank already has a long formal queue of prospective members waiting in the wings, countries like Uruguay, Colombia, Ethiopia, Angola, and Zimbabwe. So Iran basically announced its arrival at a door that already has a massive line and a lock controlled by someone else.
Section 1. Built to bypass the dollar.
To really grasp why there's so much hesitation here, we have to rewind and look at what this bank was explicitly built to do. Signed into existence with the Fortaleza Agreement in 2014 and opening its doors in Shanghai in 2015, its main goal was to mobilize resources for infrastructure and, crucially, to give developing states a louder voice in global finance. Under its president, former Brazilian leader Dilma Rousseff, they've been pushing a very specific, ambitious agenda: lend in member currencies rather than the US dollar.
But here is where we hit a staggering arithmetic paradox. President Rousseff set a goal to have 30% of the bank's loans in members' own currencies. Sounds great, right? But check this out. Almost 2/3 of the money the bank actually raises to fund itself comes from US dollar markets. Because here's the reality of a development bank. You have to borrow on international capital markets before you can lend anything out. And the deepest, cheapest bond market on the planet, it's denominated in the exact currency this bank was founded to avoid. So this isn't hypocrisy, it's just cold, hard arithmetic.
Section 2. The Russian precedent.
Now this is arguably the most important historical fact in this whole story. Russia is literally a founding shareholder of the New Development Bank, and yet back in March 2022, right after the invasion of Ukraine and the wave of international sanctions that followed, the bank completely froze all of its negotiations in Russia. We're talking about a massive exposure here, roughly $1.8 billion. Think about that. The very institution built as an alternative to the dollar entirely froze out its own founding member.
So why did they do it? Well, Dilma Rousseff explained it pretty plainly. She said, the bank acts in accordance with the restrictions imposed on financial and capital markets. That is the institution describing its own structural constraints out loud. It's a flat-out admission that they just cannot ignore global financial realities no matter what their founding ideology might be. And the cost of trying to defy those markets, it was immediate. Even after they froze those Russian projects in March of 2022, just the fact that Russia was sitting there in the capital structure made the institution look toxic to investors. By July, Fitch Ratings had downgraded the New Development Bank, and they explicitly cited the bank's difficulties in accessing the dollar bond market. The reality is, a bank that borrows in dollars can be cut off from dollars, and a bank cut off from dollars simply cannot lend. Period.
Just look at this number. Since the start of 2022, the New Development Bank has greenlit financing for more than 50 new projects all over the world. Guess how many of those projects are located in Russia? 0. Exactly 0. They had to make a definitive existential choice: protect their own market access or fund their founding shareholder.
Section 3. The three-way bind.
So bringing this back to Iran, the timing of their announcement is definitely not a coincidence. On August 13, 2026, literally the very day after Hemmati made his big speech in Jaipur, the U.S. Treasury announced a new wave of maximum pressure measures. They targeted Iran's financial system, oil sector, weapons procurement, and even crypto holdings. Washington's clear goal here is isolation, while Tehran is pushing hard for its right to get multilateral financing. But if we strip all the politics away, we're left with this structural reality.
Within a tight 48-hour window, Iran claimed they had a new path to funding, while the world's largest financial power aggressively tightened the screws.
For Iran, getting a seat at this bank would be a massive prize. In theory, membership could open up funding for things like transport, sanitation, urban development, the unglamorous but absolutely essential everyday infrastructure that gets strangled by sanctions. But the catch is absolute. To actually execute this kind of lending, a bank has to move money through a global financial system that Washington can very easily reach into and monitor.
Which brings us to an inescapable three-way bind. Letting a new member in isn't just about putting another flag on the table. It's like a puzzle where none of the pieces want to fit. Step 1, Tehran desperately needs capital. Step 2, the bank desperately needs to keep its market access so it can borrow cheaply. And Step 3, the existing members of the bank all share those borrowing costs. Every single route forward here carries a massive price tag, and someone is going to have to foot the bill.
The trap for the bank is painfully obvious. Let's look at option A. Admit Iran, but decline to actually lend them anything, basically mirroring what happened with Russia. Tehran gets a symbolic seat at the table, but no actual cash. Then there's option B. Admit Iran and actually lend to them. But doing that instantly invites the exact same market reaction Fitch handed down in 2022. We're talking a downgrade, which means higher borrowing costs for every other BRICS member, like India, Brazil, and South Africa. And that right there is exactly why maintaining a silent, never-ending accession process is the absolute safest geopolitical strategy. Nobody has to come out and say no. They just have to indefinitely avoid saying yes.
Section 4. The truth about de-dollarization.
We hear the buzzword de-dollarization thrown around all the time, right? You've got the maximalists claiming BRICS is on the verge of dropping a common currency that's going to totally destroy the dollar. But honestly, the bank's own heavy reliance on dollar funding absolutely refutes that. Then you've got the skeptics saying it's all completely fake, but that ignores the bank's very real 30% local currency lending target. So what's the actual truth? De-dollarization isn't some sudden explosive event. It's a slow, partial erosion, and it is driven by risk management, not just ideology.
And here is the ultimate paradox of this entire explainer. Iran is desperately seeking an alternative financial architecture precisely because it's been locked out of the existing one. But the new development bank's ability to shelter anyone is fundamentally bounded by the exact same dollar system it was created to hedge against. The bank literally needs the dollar system to survive.
So, how do we cut through all the political noise and see what's actually happening? Keep your eyes on these 3 data points. First, look for an official NDB board confirmation. Until they name a specific date, it hasn't happened. Second, keep an eye on those frozen Russian projects. If they suddenly unfreeze, it means the bank has entirely flipped how it calculates market risk. And third, watch that local currency lending share. If it climbs meaningfully past 30%, the bank is actually shedding its restraints. But if it stalls out, the dollar constraint is holding strong.
The difference between a flashy, symbolic announcement and a true financial revolution is never going to be settled by a speech. It all comes down to one structural reality, which leaves us with this. What good is an alternative financial system if it still has to borrow in the exact currency it's trying to replace? Can a bank that relies on dollars ever really afford to lend to someone the dollar has locked out?